Zip-A-Dee-Doo-Dah, and welcome to another Mickey's Roundtable adventure where we explore everything Disney, one themed adventure at a time. Not since Genesis has anything just spawned from nothing. Everything's got a backstory, it's got a history, it's got roots. I headed up to Georgia and the Uncle Remus Museum to explore the roots and the history of Splash Mountain, Song of the South, and all things Br'er Rabbit, Br'er Fox, Br'er Bear, all the Br'ers really. You're not going to want to miss this exciting and hopefully informative Mickey's Roundtable adventure. So I took a few days off from work and I headed up to Georgia, more specifically to Eatonton, Putnam County, Georgia, the home of the Uncle Remus Museum. Well, why is the Uncle Remus Museum in Putnam County, Georgia? Well, that's because that's where author Joel Chandler Harris was from. It's made from 3 separate buildings that have all been put together, including an original slave cabin. Slavery in the United States and the slave trade are where these stories ultimately come from, so it is part of the story. I parked my car and I was out front. I'm taking some pictures, shooting some video, and I was introduced to an amazing woman, Miss Georgia. She is the hostess at the museum, and I'm taking my pictures and video, and she comes out onto the front porch there and she yells at me, "Hey young man, come on in, come on in." So I headed on in. They do not allow photography or video inside the museum, so you're gonna have to bear with me and listen to me talk about it for a minute. She brought us all to the back room of the museum, and that was dedicated to Joel Chandler Harris himself, the author, and there were items on display that were on loan from the Joel Chandler Harris family. The other parts of the museum, the 2 front buildings, had other various artifacts. She was a delight. They packed a lot into a very small space. For Disney fans, the very first room that you came into, which was the last room that we came out of, because we went to the back room first, listened to Georgia, and then on the way out, then she pointed out everything throughout the museum of interest, anything that you had questions about. But there were lithographs, photos on the wall from the production Song of the South that were actually given to the museum by Walt Disney himself, and they were actually signed by him. And then she pointed out, so the young boy that's in the movie, and I'm going to talk about the movie a little bit more later on in the video, but name of Bobby Driscoll. Bobby Driscoll's son, just the week prior to my visit, was there visiting Georgia, and somebody said, "Hey, you should check out the Uncle Remus Museum." He had never heard of it, so Bobby Driscoll's son came and visited the museum, and they get visitors from all over the world there. And what Georgia said that was interesting, she found it interesting, was that guests from other countries from all over the world, Japan and Africa and Europe and all over the place, will know more about Uncle Remus and the Uncle Remus tales and the Br'er Rabbit stories than Americans do. Joel Chandler Harris's writings about Uncle Remus and Br'er Rabbit, Br'er Bear, Br'er Fox have been translated into 27 different languages. Georgia and the museum are trying to gather a collection of all the different translations. Currently, they had a display case, they had 9 different translations in there. And so if you have any books that have been translated into a language other than English and you wanted to donate that, contact the museum. They are definitely interested. That would be cool to have a complete collection there of those various works. From the museum, I headed to downtown Eatonton, right on Courthouse Square. There is a statue, or statues I should say, of Uncle Remus and Br'er Fox and Br'er Rabbit and other critters telling the Br'er Rabbit stories to a young boy. And what was neat, there was a little speaker, a little pedestal, a little post, and there were buttons on it. And you push the button and you can hear the telling of a Br'er Rabbit story.
And he jumped up real fast. And what happened? all you could hear was rip, and they ripped that long fluffy tail off, and rabbits been had little cotton tails ever since. And I guess my nose is still growing too.
The voice, the narrator on that speaker and that recording was Miss Georgia from the Uncle Remus Museum. So about a block away, maybe 2 blocks at most, at the corner of Harris and Madison Avenues in Eatonton is the site of the boyhood home of Joel Chandler Harris. Joel Chandler Harris and his mother lived together. He was only child and raised by his mother. She was a seamstress and she worked for the rich family. The big house is still there, but the small house that they lived in is not there anymore, but there is a historic marker. I love historic markers. I'd rather have the real thing, but an historic marker will do. Both would be even better. But there is the historic marker. He was shy as a boy, and as into adulthood, he was also shy. But so he became a voracious reader. He would read anything that he could get his hands on. But he would get and take whatever he could find and read, including newspapers and newspaper clippings. And one day, one fateful day, he received a newspaper called The Countryman. There was an ad in there. They were looking for an apprentice printer. He was hooked. He was interested. He pursued and got the job. The Countryman was produced at a plantation. The Countryman was the only newspaper that was printed on a plantation. It wasn't downtown or anything like that. And it was 9 miles from downtown Eatonton, where Joel Chandler Harris lived with his mother. So he had to go out and move to the plantation and live out there, living and working on a plantation. He interacted with the slaves that lived and worked there as well. And while he was there interacting with them, he heard their stories. Br'er Rabbit stories, Br'er Fox stories. Something that I learned while I was there at the museum was that the plantation, the main plantation house, it's still there. Now it's on private property and it's off the highway and you can't get to it, you can't visit it, but it's still there. Nobody's living in it, but it's still there. I think that's really cool. So I drove out that 9 miles out from Eatonton to the countryside and found the historic marker marking the site of the Turnwold Plantation, where Joel Chandler Harris worked as a printer's apprentice and originally heard all of those stories and tales about the Br'er Rabbit characters. After the Civil War, the newspaper folded up, went out of business, and Joel Chandler Harris had to find work elsewhere. He bounced around. He ended up in Savannah, Georgia for a bit. That's where he met his wife. From there, they ended up going to Atlanta, Georgia. In Atlanta, he got a job at one of the local newspapers, a writing job. He wrote a column, and it was a daily column. He had to come up with something new every single day. What was he going to write about? Well, his mind and his memory, very sharp memory apparently, because they went back to his days of youth, working and living on the plantation and hearing the stories from the slaves there about Br'er Rabbit and Br'er Fox. And so he started writing those into his columns. Uncle Remus is the character that Joel Chandler Harris made up to be the narrator for his story, because that's how he heard the stories. They were verbally, orally transmitted through the generations, not just in the southern United States on the plantations. They'd come all the way from Africa, came to the plantations, and Joel Chandler Harris, being in a fairly unique position to hear them and remember them, was able to record them and pass them down to us to this very day. The house that he lived in, it's still there in Atlanta today. It's called the Wren's Nest. This was a cool museum. The house and property received the name the Wren's Nest because, well, one day they headed out to the mailbox, and what did they find in the mailbox? A wren's nest. Joel Chandler Harris lived there and worked there, continued to write up until his death in 1908. His grave and that of his wife is at Westview Cemetery, not very far away at all. I went and visited there as well. He was a well-known author. He did pretty good for himself. He was friends with the likes of Mark Twain, Harriet Beecher Stowe, Teddy Roosevelt. They had a drawing, a cartoon on the wall of him at the White House with Teddy Roosevelt entitled Uncle Remus Goes to the White House. He was also friends with Andrew Carnegie. So when Joel Chandler Harris passed away, Carnegie gets out his checkbook and he says, here you go, and he gives him a bunch of money. He says, here, turn this into a museum. It's been a museum ever since, over 100 years. They had a sign on the wall showing what the original prices were. It was like 26 cents and 10 cents for kids, something like that. Quite a few years later, another fan of Joel Chandler Harris and the Br'er Rabbit stories happened to be one Walt Disney.
One of the most entertaining chapters in American folklore was supplied us by the wonderful Uncle Remus stories of Joel Chandler Harris. For 4 generations, these magical tales of Br'er Rabbit and his talking animal friends have delighted the hearts of children of all ages and in all parts of the world.
Walt Disney wanted to turn the Br'er Rabbit stories into a movie. The movie, taking place in Georgia, premiered at the Grand Movie Palace, the Fox Theater in downtown Atlanta. It still exists, so I headed there and I took a tour of the theater. The Fox Theater, like the Uncle Remus Museum, didn't allow videotaping on the tour. They allowed some photography, but I decided to skip doing any of that and just enjoyed the tour. It opened its doors Christmas Day 1929. On its first day on the program was included Steamboat Willie. When Song of the South premiered at the Fox Theater, Walt Disney, of course, came to town. He stayed at the hotel across the street. I popped my head in there and looked around a little bit before heading on over for my tour. Not at the premiere, unfortunately, due to state and local segregation laws. James Baskett and the other black actors that were in the film, stars of the film, were not allowed to attend. I've got 2 copies of Song of the South. I got them both on eBay. The Uncle Remus Museum, they have copies you can buy there as well. If you've never seen it and you want to, if you're curious, I would say watch it for yourself, judge for yourself. I really like it. It is a well-done movie, well-crafted movie. Received 2 Academy Awards and won the Academy Award for Best Song.
Zip-A-Dee-Doo-Dah, my oh my, what a wonderful day.
James Baskett, who played Uncle Remus in the movie, received an honorary award for a groundbreaking performance.
Academy wishes to give you this honor.
Thank you, Miss Bergman.
The film takes place in Georgia following the Civil War during the Reconstruction era and follows a young boy, Johnny, played by Bobby Driscoll.
I'd better hurry or I'll miss my train.
Miss it. You won't regret it.
Daddy, you're going back? Daddy, don't go! Please, Daddy, please! I won't stay here! If you go, I'm going too!
Before getting too far along, he encounters Uncle Remus. Uncle Remus, who lives and works on the plantation and is known for his Br'er Rabbit stories, kind of takes Johnny under his wing and guides him and influences him by telling him the Br'er Rabbit story.
Appears to me like you was figuring on going someplace.
I am. And nobody's gonna stop me.
They didn't just randomly pick stories. The stories that are told are influenced by what's happening in the live action story, and then the live action story is influenced by the tales that Uncle Remus tells. Very well done.
You're laughing at me.
At you, honey? No, sir. I was laughing because they're exactly the words that old Br'er Rabbit used the time that he lit out from his briar patch.
Don't you know you can't run away from trouble?
Well, I'm glad there ain't gonna be no trouble.
There ain't no place that far.
Just the same, I done made up my mind, and I ain't never coming back. Zip-A-Dee-Doo-Dah, Zip-A-Dee.
Us news he knows, Dah he dangle twixt the heavens and the earth. First he's scared he gonna fall. Then he's scared he ain't gonna fall.
He yanking, he pulling, he heaving, he haul. But for no use.
He knows somebody caught him all right, and he sort of specs he knows who that somebody is.
And sure enough, up on Chickapin Hill where he lived, who should hear the ruckus but old Br'er Fox? And when that old scamp see he done caught Br'er Rabbit, he holler out,
I got him. I got that old rabbit. I sure has got him. I got the old rabbit this time for sure.
I look at the character of Br'er Rabbit as very much like Bugs Bunny, but instead of tricking Daffy Duck or Yosemite Sam or Elmer Fudd, he's tricking Br'er Bear and Br'er Fox.
What you doing up there?
oh, keeping the crows out the cornfield. I was making $1 a minute.
$1 a minute?
Dee-Dah is. Would you like to make $1 a minute, brother?
Wonderful.
Oh, no.
$1 a minute.
What you doing?
Howdy, bro. Thanks,
Get out of my trap.
Hey. Bubba.
Hey,
I was making $1 a minute.
As a result of the Br'er Rabbit story, Johnny decides to stay at the plantation with his grandmother and his mother. Along the way, he makes friends and he makes some enemies. Over the course of the film, there are 3 animated Br'er Rabbit story segments. The second of which is the infamous tar baby scene. The tar baby is a metaphor for a sticky situation. It could easily be molasses or honey or tree sap or anything sticky. In the story, Br'er Rabbit gets out of his sticky situation by being smarter than Br'er Fox and certainly Br'er Bear, who's not too bright.
I mean, whatever you do, Brother Fox, whatever you do, please, Brother Fox, please don't fling me in that briar patch. Briar patch? Briar patch! I'm glad I thought of that. Yes, indeed, I sure am glad I thought of that. But you ain't gonna fling me in there, is you? There!
You can tell Aunt Tempy. You can tell Grandma. You can even tell my mama. But whatever you do, don't tell your mom. Ain't that what Br'er Rabbit did to Br'er Fox? Being little, without much strength, we're supposed to use our heads instead of our foots.
Johnny, trying to emulate Br'er Rabbit, ends up making his sticky situation even stickier.
With that, Johnny. He'll find out. Thinks he's so smart. It wasn't his fault. He told us not to tell our mom. Yeah, 'cause that's just what he wanted us to do.
But you and your stories are making that very difficult. I think maybe it would be better if you didn't hear any more for a while.
On this side of the stories ain't done no...
They only confuse him. Now, I know you mean well, Uncle Remus, but Johnny's too young.
Miss Sally...
I'll have to ask you not to tell him any more.
But Uncle Remus, you're the best friend I have.
Maybe so. But I'm that pestered, I don't know whether I'm end upwards or end downwards. But I does know this. I ain't gonna be telling you no more stories.
The third animated sequence is the Laughing Place story, and Br'er Rabbit, having been caught again, gets away by tricking Br'er Fox and Br'er Bear into bringing him into the Laughing Place.
That's terrible. Huh? Now, wait a minute. Wait a minute, Br'er Rabbit. Maybe I better explain something to you. I said I was gonna roast you on that fire. Now, is that something to laugh about?
Well, I can't help laughing, Br'er Fox. I just been to my laughing place. And every time I start thinking about my laughing place, I can't help.
He doesn't say where it is, and so they go looking for it.
Close now. Come on now, let's take it home. We'll have some.
Wait a minute. That is, that is the laughing place.
Oh, where?
Right through there.
That rabbit's just trying to
Me first. Me first. You said this was a laughing place. And I ain't laughing.
I didn't say it was your laughing place. I said it was my laughing place, Br'er Bear.
When it was released, it did very well at the box office. It was not without criticism and controversy either. Controversy and criticism has followed it ever since. I happen to like it, but you know, I'm a white guy from suburban Minneapolis, St. Paul. What do I know? Of course, Georgia, Miss Georgia from the Uncle Remus Museum, a 83-year-old black woman, mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, who herself was raised by her grandmother, who was born in the 1880s. She lived through segregation and Jim Crow and the Civil Rights Movement and all of it. According to her, you know, we're supposed to trust the experts. I'll take her as an expert. There's nothing wrong or racist with Song of the South. So I'll take her word for it. I love the movie, enjoy the movie, and think as many people should see it as want to see it, and shouldn't be hidden from the world. In the 1980s, Disney legend, Disney Imagineer Tony Baxter designed the ride Splash Mountain. It opened in 1989 in Disneyland and 1992 at Walt Disney World in Florida. Later on, it opened up at Tokyo Disneyland. That's the only version of the ride that still exists. It was a classic, is a classic if you go to Tokyo. Flume ride, log flume ride. You get in the log and you go through, and there's the big drops, and then there's scenes in the middle. Splash Mountain, it's a mix of the two kind of rides. It's a dark ride, it's a thrill ride. It's a rabbit running away from home, and he's being chased by a fox and a bear, and he keeps getting away. They catch him, he escapes at the end, and they celebrate. That's pretty simple, but underneath that simple story, there is greater depth and layers referencing the original animated sequences from Song of the South. There's a really good 3-act structure. You build tension and then you release it, and then you build tension and you release it through little drops, through the slip and slide, slip and falls, and then the big drop at the end. And they all tie into the 3 stories, animated stories that were in Song of the South. Stories that were not invented by Tony Baxter for the ride. They weren't invented or created by Walt Disney for the movie. And they weren't invented by Joel Chandler Harris for the book. They came from slaves that had come from Africa and had passed down those stories verbally, orally. They got written down, they got put into a movie, and then they got put into a ride. I'm going to wrap it up here. Let me quote Miss Georgia from back there at the Uncle Remus Museum. You can't measure progress if you erase history. And this is fantastic history. It's American history, it's Black history, it's African history, and we had a piece of it at Magic Kingdom, we had a piece of it at Disneyland, and it is now gone. The title of my video is Zip-A-Dee-Doo-Dah Day. It was actually 3 days, and the order that I did things in is not the same order that I presented them here in the video. I did it more of a chronological order based on the life of Joel Chandler Harris, rather than the order that I went in and visited these things. So anyway, that's it for this Mickey's Roundtable adventure. Be sure to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you want to see more content, and until I add more content, we'll see you real soon.